Hi, my name is Dean Paul Deniston, and today we'll be replacing the throttle on our Razor MX500 Dirt Rocket. This is a fairly easy procedure. It should take approximately 20 minutes from start to finish. You will need the following tools: a Phillips screwdriver, a standard screwdriver, a 3mm Allen wrench, a 4mm Allen wrench, a 5mm Allen wrench, a pair of pliers, a pair of scissors, a couple zip ties, a 10mm open-end wrench, and a bottle of soapy water. This process can be completed in 4 easy steps. Step 1, removing the fairings. Step 2, removing the throttle. Step 3, installing your new throttle. And step 4, reinstalling the fairings. Now, as with working on any electric product, make sure you turn off the power before you begin. Now let's get started on step 1, removing our fairings. Let's start by removing the seat fairing. To do this, there are 6 bolts that need to be removed. 2 inside the fairings, 2 on the front corners, and 2 under the tail. We'll start by removing the 2 inside the fairings with our 5mm Allen wrench and our 10mm open-end wrench. Put your open-end wrench on the nut and put the Allen wrench into the bolt and loosen. Now move on to the other side. Next, we'll remove the 2 on the front corners with the same 5mm Allen wrench. These 2 don't require an open-end wrench. And the other side. And finally, the 2 under the tail. You'll be using the same 5mm Allen wrench and your 10mm open-end wrench, as these have a nut on the back. And now the other one. Now that all the bolts are removed, slide the seat straight back and lift up and set it aside. Now we can remove the gas tank. To do this, there are 2 bolts that need to be removed, one in the front, one in the back. Take your 3mm Allen wrench and remove those bolts. With the bolts removed, we can take the gas tank off and save it for later. Next, let's remove the battery box. To do this, we need to remove 6 bolts, 2 on the top, 2 on the front, and 2 on the bottom. We'll start on the top with our 4mm Allen wrench and remove those bolts. And the other top one. For the remaining 4, we'll be using our Phillips screwdriver. The backside of the bolt has nuts that may fall out when removing the bolts. If it does, make sure not to lose them, as we'll need them later. And don't forget about the bottom 2. Once all 6 bolts are removed, you can remove the right side of the box by sliding straight out. And put it aside. Now we can remove the left side of the box by sliding it straight out. And you'll notice there are wires holding it to the bike. We have to disconnect the plugs here, here, and here. To disconnect these plugs, pinch the connector and pull straight apart. Do the same for the other 2. Now that the plugs are disconnected, take the cover and save it for later. And that concludes step 1, removing our fairings. Now on to step 2, removing our throttle. For this step, we have to unplug the throttle, cut a couple zip ties, slide the brake back, slide the throttle back, remove the grip, and then remove the throttle. We'll start by disconnecting the throttle cable. Find the connector with 6 wires on each side, pinch on the connector, and separate. Next, take your scissors and cut the 2 zip ties on top of the frame. Carefully. Now, using your 5mm Allen wrench, loosen the bolt on the top of the brake. and then slide the brake out of the way. With your 3mm Allen wrench, loosen the bolt on the bottom of the throttle, and then slide your throttle back against the brake. Removing the grip can be difficult, but a good trick is to take your standard screwdriver, pry it underneath the grip, pry upward, and using your soapy water, spray some in there. And twist the grip until it comes off. Next, we're going to remove the throttle. Take your throttle cable, feed it back through the number plate, and slide the throttle off the bars. But be careful, as there's a spacer inside the throttle you don't want to lose. And that concludes step 2, removing your throttle. And now on to step 3, installing our new throttle. Slide the throttle on the bars, followed by the spacer. Feed the throttle cable through the number plate. And plug the throttle cable in. Connect it till it clicks. Now we're gonna zip tie the cables to the frame to keep them out of the way. Take all the cables coming through the number plate. Using your zip tie them to the frame. Using your other zip tie, we're gonna do the same thing but a little lower. And with your scissors, cut off the excess, carefully. Now we can reinstall the grip. Take your grip, spray some soapy water in there to make the process easier, and slide the grip on the handlebars. Now slide your throttle against the grip. Take your 3mm Allen wrench and tighten the bolt on the bottom of the throttle. Once that's nice and tight, slide the brake against the throttle and tighten it with your 5mm Allen wrench. And that concludes step 3, installing your new throttle. Now on to step 4, reinstalling your fairings. We'll start with the left side of the battery box. First, we'll plug in the 3 connectors coming from the battery box. 2 go to the power switch. 1 and 2. And the third goes to the charging port. And put the cover on, lining up the holes. Now take the right side of the battery cover and place that on too. Align the 2 sides to each other, and then you can bolt them together. You probably dropped a few of the nuts while removing it, so now's a good time to put them back in. With your 4mm Allen wrench, tighten the top 2. Now move on to the front, and remember, the remaining 4 are Phillips heads. Slide the bolt through the hole and through the frame, and then tighten it. Now move on to the bottom 2. And now we can install the gas tank. Set it on top of the frame, line up the 2 holes, and put the bolts in, one in the front, one in the back. And using your 3mm Allen wrench, tighten them down. And finally, we can install the seat fairing. Set it on the bike and slide it into place. Take your 5mm Allen wrench and your bolt and secure the fairing. I like to start with the front left corner, and then the one on the opposite side. Now the remaining 4 require your 5mm Allen wrench along with a 10mm open end. I like to start on the inside ones. The open end wrench secures the nut from the bottom, while the Allen wrench tightens from the top. And do the same with the other side. Once those are tight, we can move to installing the 2 bolts under the tail. With the 2 bolts under the tail secure, that concludes step 4, reinstalling our fairings. Now hit that power switch and make sure it works. I hope you found this video helpful and informative, but if you are still having any troubles or complications, please feel free to visit the customer support section on Razor.com. Ciao ciao, brown cow.